And we just have one ballot measure. I do want to go through Massachusetts. There's only 4 ballot measures for Massachusetts. So let's go ahead and put this bad boy up on the screen. Again, ballot measures, if you don't want to support the presidential campaign and you live in a ballot measure state, please still go vote for those ballot measures. I keep telling people, don't sit at home. You really need to support this. It will affect you directly. So we're going through all the BI states, and now we are on Massachusetts. And Massachusetts, I'm going to sum this up for you. Massachusetts is an indirect initiative state. What that means is that, can I make this bigger? Oh, I guess not really. Oh, there we go. What that means is that in Massachusetts, if a successful petition drive makes a stop at the Massachusetts General Court, aka the Massachusetts Legislature for ratification or approval, it means that once this is presented to the legislature, proposals for amendments and proposals for statutes face distinct requirements. So indirect initiative is different from California. People ask me, why does California have so many questions on the ballot and a state like Massachusetts will only have 4? California is direct initiative. That means they collect the number of signatures that they need for the ballot question, and it goes directly on the ballot. In Massachusetts, it's not that easy. We get the signature requirements, but then it has to go through the legislature for approval. And once the legislator approves it, then it is on the ballot. So that's why we don't have as many. But that being said, we have passed some things through it. Like we legalized marijuana that way. A lot of people don't realize that, you know? So it just depends. But the direct initiative states it's a lot easier to get that on the ballot. So just keep that in mind. And here's something to note as well. It says amendments must be approved by 1/4 of the legislator in 2 joint sessions before proceeding to the ballot. However, if the amendment is rejected, then it never reaches the ballot for a vote. It just dies. So people have to understand that statutes may be adopted by the legislator by a majority vote in both houses. If statute is not adopted, proponents must collect another smaller round of signatures to place the statute on the ballot. So we also have the power to repeal legislation via veto referendum in Massachusetts. So interesting there, fam. The Massachusetts General Court can also place measures on the ballot as legislatively referred constitutional amendments. However, when a citizen proposed amendment is placed before the legislator by voters, lawmakers with a 3/4 supermajority vote called into joint session can amend the proposed amendment. So like I said, it's a little bit more difficult to get certain things on the ballot here, right? We do have that single subject rule, similar to a lot of other states. So, but it says here, Massachusetts law requires initiatives to concern only topics which are related or which are mutually dependent. The rule is a little bit less restrictive than the full single subject rule employed in many other states. So, measures may not propose laws regarding the following subjects: religion or religious institutions, judges, judicial decisions, or courts. That's important. Laws that apply to particular cities or towns, and laws that make specific appropriations. The 18th Amendment, which is the prohibition of alcohol, restricting rights found in the Declaration of Rights, and subject restriction or the modification of existing restriction. Let's go ahead and get into the measures here. So again, like I said, we only have 4. So let's go to the first one. This one is kind of basic. It makes sense to me. Massachusetts question 1, authorization of state auditor to audit general court initiative. I mean, this is a pretty easy one. And this is important here. It says, meaning that although it was initiated by the voters, it first went to the Massachusetts legislator to sign off on. So just keep in mind, again, in Massachusetts, the legislator has to approve it first before it can appear on the ballot. A yes vote supports explicitly authorizing the state auditor to audit the accounts, programs, activities, and functions of all departments, offices, commissions, institutions, and activities of the state legislature, any authorities or districts created by the state legislature. Who supports this? Diana DiZoglio. She's a Democrat. That's the state auditor. So I would assume the state auditor would support this. The Democratic Party of Massachusetts and the Massachusetts Fiscal Alliance. Here's one of the arguments. Certain legislative leaders who hold the keys to the books and the information we're seeking are twisting and manipulating the state constitution and the current statute. You don't say. Duh. This is an effort to make it crystal clear that the legislature is mandated to receive an audit. Since those leaders seem to be confused about what the law says, we're not doing anything that doesn't occur in every other state entity. Folks will have to wonder what they're hiding if they're not complying with an audit that every other state entity complies with. Yeah, I think this one's common sense, guys. Like it's like pretty common sense to me. It goes on to say here, campaign finance money that has been spent to support or oppose. No money has been spent to oppose this initiative, but it says that over 400,833 has been spent to support it. So it will probably most likely pass because they've spent a lot of money to support it and no money to oppose it. So again, for me, I'm just kind of like, I think that one's an easy one. Yeah, the state auditor should be able to audit. So just now, this one is interesting, especially if you have kids that are in high school. Massachusetts question 2, repeal competency assessment requirement for high school graduation initiative. Oh, honey. So this is standardized testing here in Massachusetts. It is known as the MCAS. So listen to this. I don't know how everybody feels about standardized testing. I'm not a big fan, but here we go. A yes vote supports repealing the requirement that students must achieve a certain competency level on the MCAS exam to graduate from high school. The initiative would require that students participate in the assessment program without achieving a certain competency level and complete all local or district graduation requirements, number of class credits, satisfactory grades, and regular attendance. If a student does not meet the minimum competency requirement when they take the MCAS in the 10th grade, the proposed state law would require them to retake the assessment again in the 11th or the 12th grade. The law would also allow any former Massachusetts high school student who was denied a diploma due to not meeting the competency, who was denied a diploma due to not meeting the competency requirements to request and receive a diploma if they had fulfilled all other local or district requirements. The initiative would also prohibit any sign of distinction on diplomas concerning how a student performed on the MCAS. So how does everybody feel about standardized testing? I've never really been a big fan of it. I will tell you one thing about the MCAS that you may not know of if you don't live here in Massachusetts. The MCAS, it used to be, and we'll see how far this goes, but some people have told me different stories from their experience. But it used to be if you achieved a certain score on the MCAS, then you can attend any public university in Massachusetts tuition free. Now, I've heard from other people that there are certain stipulations with that, and like there's certain schools that they kind of restrict you from. So I don't know. I didn't go to high school in Massachusetts, but that was one of the pros, I guess, that if you got that score, you could go to a public university here tuition free. But I've never really been a fan of standardized tests. I think they're a waste of time, to be honest with you. Who supports this? the Massachusetts AFL-CIO, and the Massachusetts Teachers Association. So this is pretty big. Here's one of the arguments. Mass residents are ready to join the vast majority of states that have scrapped the use of standardized tests as a graduation requirement and instead use authentic educator-designed assessments of student skills. The MCAS will still be taken and is required by federal law, but it will be used for diagnostic purposes and not as a high-stakes test required for earning a diploma. And I agree with this. Again, like I said, one of the things used to drive me crazy, sometimes there are students that perform really well in the classroom, but when it came to those standardized tests, they struggled. And some people are just not good with standardized tests. And it would suck for someone to, unfortunately, not be able to pass a course because they didn't get a certain score on a standardized test, even though they were performing well in that course throughout the year. And I've seen that happen to people, especially when I lived in North Carolina. I saw that happen. And to me, it just didn't make any sense. I'm like, you already were passing the class. Why do you have to pass the standardized test in order to graduate or in order to pass this class? I never really fully agreed with that. Who is against it? Well. Governor Maura Healey. Of course she is against it. And also the Massachusetts Secretary of Education, Patrick Tutwiler. Okay, Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education. So here's what they say. Importantly, we know from Brown University research that high school MCAS scores predict long-term success and appear to reflect student academic skills, not simply socioeconomic status or school characteristics. We can't eliminate gaps in achievement and equity if we strip ourselves of the tools to measure them. Instead of wasting time fighting for legislation that does away with the graduation standard, a true commitment to equity requires we focus squarely on helping all students meet it. Yeah, but you haven't done that in years. You haven't been doing that. That's part of the problem. What data will show you is that when it comes to standardized testing, particularly here in Massachusetts, you know who underperforms? Black students, low-income students, students of color, students that speak another language, students that are English language learners. They're more likely to struggle with those tests. The students who perform the best when it comes to those standardized tests in Massachusetts are white students. So if that is the case, Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education, you should have been doing the equity issue a long time ago, but you weren't doing that. You see what I mean? Get out of here, man. Get out of here. So I'm like, whatever, get rid of it. Now, here's the problem. There is no money spent to support it, but there's over $973,000 spent to oppose it. Why not take that $973,000 and use that to fill that equity gap that you're talking about between the kids and the testing? You know, they kill me with this. They kill me with this, the way that they spend money in this state. That's the cash contributions. Oh, sorry. Total contributions to oppose it is over 1 million. Sorry about that, guys. And total contributions to support it is over 3.4 million. So that was going to be pretty close. We'll see what happens. I know how I'm voting. Let's go ahead to question number 3. This is a big one, guys. If you drive for Uber or Lyft, ride share, you're doing the damn thing, this one's going to be huge. This is question number 3. Unionization and collective bargaining for transportation network. Drivers Initiative. This is the one, fam. A yes vote supports providing for unionizing and collective bargaining for transportation network drivers. In short, this would allow rideshare drivers such as Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, etc., to unionize, to start a union. I don't know why they use the fancy language. I just made it easier for you. Requiring the state to oversee the negotiations between the parties and approve the negotiated recommendations on wages, benefits, and terms and conditions of work, and requiring collective bargaining agreements to be approved by at least a majority of riders who have completed at least 100 trips during the previous quarter. It will create a hearing process from Massachusetts Employment Relations Board to process unfair work practice charges against transportation network companies. The board would be authorized to award compensation to wronged parties if unfair work practices have been committed. Companies would be authorized to appeal the board's decision to the state appeal court. Yeah. Authorize a driver organization to be exclusive bargaining representative for all drivers after it has collected signatures from at least 25% of active drivers. The initiative would define active drivers as drivers who have completed more than the median number of rides in the past 6 months. The board would determine if the driver organization has collected the required number of signatures. If so, the designated driver organization would have the exclusive right to represent drivers in negotiations with companies and collect voluntary membership dues. Any collective bargaining agreement would have to be approved by at least a majority of riders who have completed at least 100 trips during their previous quarter and the Secretary of Labor. The agreement would be in effect for the following 3 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, do you support Uber drivers, Lyft drivers having the ability to start a union? So this is a big one. And here's the thing. If we pass this here in Massachusetts, this could also transfer to other states. Other states will be pushed, there will be pressure on Connecticut. There'll be pressure on New Hampshire. There will be pressure on other states within the region to say, I guess we better let them unionize here too, right? I think it's fair. Now, we'll tell you something I did notice, and I just want to be completely honest with you guys. Like now in Massachusetts, when you try to reserve an Uber, there is a surcharge now that says like the Massachusetts benefits charge, because it was agreed upon a couple of months ago that Uber and Lyft drivers would be able to qualify for sick pay and benefits here in Massachusetts. And the way that they went about doing that is by adding a little surcharge. So now if you request an Uber ride, you will see like maybe like a $2 surcharge. I'm fine with that. I'm like, whatever, give people their benefits and keep it moving. So that doesn't bother me, but I would love to see this happen for them to be able to form a union. Yes on 3 is leading the campaign in support of question 3. And I've already seen commercials for it. Who supports this? Jim McGovern, Ayanna Pressley, and Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell. It's interesting. Andrea Campbell ran for mayor of Boston too. She lost to Michelle Wu. Unions that supported Service Employees International Union and Service Employees International Union Local 32BJ, the Center for American Progress and Progressive Massachusetts. And here's one of the statements here. I want you to hear from one of the actual drivers. This is from Domingo. He said, during the pandemic, I was working 12-hour days every single day. At that time, we were making what we deserved. But after the pandemic is when we started to see the pay really decrease, despite that we had been providing a service the community needed. They just started lowering the pay. Waiting time became longer and unjust deactivations occurred more frequently. There was no consideration about the sacrifice we made to keep the service running. A union is the only thing that would give us a voice to be able to have some say in things that really directly affect us. So let's see that happen, guys. It would be great if this passes. I can't imagine someone voting against this. Like I can't imagine someone voting against people being able to unionize unless you're just a cold son of a bitch. Like I don't know, man. There has been over $4 million that has been spent to support this initiative and $0 to oppose. So let's see how that works out, ladies and gentlemen. And we have one more, and this is the fun one. Wait till we get to the fun one. Here's a note here from Roger, though. It wouldn't hurt to vote for it, but the initiative should have been was to make it easier to form cooperatives, especially worker co-ops. I agree with Roger. Unions are a great step, but worker co-ops in the end is the ultimate goal. And I say worker co-ops in the end is the ultimate goal because, number one, as a worker co-op, you own part of the business. So I always say it's great to start like with a union, but if you can, it's great to get to that worker co-op option, right? So I agree with Roger there. He goes on to say, I have a whole slew of them ready to go, like right of first offer, formation of a state agency to help workers start worker co-ops by providing them with what they need from tax consultation, grant programs, research, etc., to help get them started. I have an initiative to mandate that a cooperative study curriculum be introduced at public universities, both municipal and state, as an alternative to the traditional business degrees like an MBA. I have an initiative that when the AGs revoke corporate charters to companies for egregious behavior to issue out worker cooperative charters in their place. I trust this will pass, but if not, then the drivers should run with this because I doubt the unions would push for it. It's a good point. And now we get to the fun one, guys. Yeah. Here we get to the fun ones. Question 4. Legalization and regulation of psychedelic substances. Woo! Should we play the song? Should we play the song? I gotta play the music for this one. I don't have creepy music. I only have this one song. All right, guys, let's see. Let's go on. Katrina's psychedelics, fam. What is up? Let me see if this passes. Okay. Let me see if this will pass. A yes vote supports this initiative too. This is where it gets a little weird. Create a natural Psychedelic Substances Commission and Advisory Board to regulate the licensing of psychedelic substances and services, including the administration of psychedelic substances to individuals 21 years of age or older under licensed supervision. So you have to be at least 21. So sorry for those of you that are like 18, 19, but they're pushing for 21 years of age. The part here that gets tricky here is under licensed supervision. So does that mean like in order for you to do this and like shroom out, does that mean that like you have to go to a certain facility and walk into the room and then there's like a chaperone who stands there by you while you do what you're doing? I don't know. Okay, so let's go. So I don't know. The Year Sailor Goon says, oh, so it's like a medical treatment. See, that's where I get confused because in Massachusetts, we kind of just jumped ahead when it came to marijuana. This state decriminalized marijuana and then we voted to legalize it as a ballot measure. So we didn't really go through the, okay, it has to be medical and then decriminalize. And then, you know, if that makes sense, I don't know. Anywho, let's continue. It also will authorize individuals 21 years of age or older to grow, possess, and use a personal amount of psychedelic substances. Okay. So then that means you can also grow it, possess it, and use it. So maybe everything doesn't have to be supervised. Let's continue. Miss Pamela said, "What are you on tonight, Sabby?" Nothing at all. Nothing. Just joy. Just joy. I just love it. I think we'll be the first state on the East Coast to pass this, right? Just like when we did with marijuana, impose an excise tax rate of 15% on the sale of psychedelic substances at licensed administration facilities. So that's good for the state. Authorize localities to levy an additional tax of up to 2% on psychedelic substances and regulate the time, place, and manner of the operation of natural psychedelic substance licenses. And that's where I get a little bit confused again, because one part it said that you can grow it, possess it, and then another part says that it has to be in you need a licensed administration facility. So maybe it's both, right? Either way, I think people should be able to, do this if they want. Like, I'm not against people doing this. And check this out. Massachusetts for Mental Health Options is leading the campaign in support of the initiative. Mental health options. Who supports this? Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps. You guys know Dr. Bronner? Dr. Bronner Soap. New Approach Advocacy Fund. And Emily Onashuk, who is from Massachusetts for Mental Health Options, Grassroots Outreach Director, and a U.S. Navy veteran. Plant-based therapeutics are the most effective treatment I have seen for veterans struggling with mental health challenges after service. So this is interesting. Let's go to opposition. So of course there is some opposition, right? So Chris Cohen, he said, "We are not opposed, advocating against the medicinal properties of this, but this goes way too far too quickly and doesn't address any of the real concerns that public safety advocates have, as well as mental health professionals." Whatever. Be quiet, Chris. Anyway, I say, I'm just like, whatever. Shoot. There is over $6 million spent to support it, and no money spent to oppose it. So it's probably going to pass. And if it passes, I believe we will be the only state on the East Coast that has legalized shroomies, And actually, it says psychedelics, so it's not just shrooms. And this is, wow. What is this? Sabby Sabs, there's actually indigenous churches here in Massachusetts that hold psychedelic ceremonies. Well, damn. Thank you for letting me know. Wow. So yeah, let's see if this works, guys. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, this one's another one. So number 4, that was the fun. We have another one about minimum wage for tipped employees. And this is another one where this is the second state I've covered so far that has a minimum wage for tipped employees initiative. So peep this one out. A yes vote supports gradually increasing the wage of tipped employees until it meets the state minimum wage in 2029 and continues to permit tipping in addition to the minimum wage. Can we get a hell yeah? Can we get a hell yeah? Let's get it. Hey. Let's go. Do the rock away. All right. So this is a good one. This is a good one because the minimum wage here is already pretty, it's like we're 15. So listen, How would this change the way tip employees are paid in the state? Peep this, fam. January 1st of 2025, 64% of the state minimum wage. 2026, 73%. 2027, 82%. 2028, 91%. And 2029, by that year, you will receive 100% of the state minimum wage plus tips. And people can afford it because, listen, let me tell you something. There's a lot of millionaires that live in this state, a lot. And they can afford it. They can still afford to tip you. You can be able to get the minimum wage and still get tipped as well. I always tip people, so they can afford it. Let them pay. So if you look at the number here, it says as of January 2024, the minimum wage for tipped employees in Massachusetts was $6.75 in addition to tips. And the minimum wage for non-tipped employees was $15. So imagine if you were making $15 an hour plus tips. So yeah, I say go for it, fam. Now, here's where the naysayers gonna come in. Sabby, what if the restaurants can't afford to pay them that? I would argue that most of them can. And again, like I said, this is a wealthy state. It's one of the wealthiest states in the country. I can understand if we were having this argument and I was in Arkansas, then I would probably agree with you. But Massachusetts is one of the wealthiest states in the country. They can afford it. So let's go on here. Our Fair Wage Plus Tips Massachusetts is leading that campaign. Who supports it? Patricia Jellin and Tricia Farley Bovair. And one of the arguments is that thousands of tip workers in Massachusetts are leaving the restaurant industry and are not willing to return without one fair wage. And nearly 250 Massachusetts employers are now paying one fair wage to recruit staff and seek a level playing field. The time to pass one fair wage is now. Yeah, because remember, some of these employees still had to work during the pandemic, even though we were locked down, because like the delivery drivers, the food delivery drivers, they were still delivering food. You just couldn't go inside of the restaurants and eat during that time, right? But people still had to cook the food. So just keep that in mind. Some of these people were still working because they were considered to be essential employees. Who's against it? The Massachusetts Restaurant Association. Now, here's one of their arguments here. They said if the ballot question passes, it's going to impact three tiers. It's going to impact the server themselves, who's going to make much less money. Will they? We don't know that. And isn't that up to the server to decide if they want to continue? If that happens and the server says they're making less money, they can always quit. Also goes on to say it's going to impact the restaurant owner, who's going to have higher costs upwards of $18,000 per tip employee to implement this. And it's going to have a higher cost for the consumer because there's going to be higher costs. Yeah, I don't buy this, fam. I think you're just being cheap, because it's not like they're increasing the minimum wage for tipped servers from $6.75 to $15 overnight. They're not. It's a gradual increase, just like when we got the $15 minimum wage. That was over the course of a number of years. So I think Steve is just trying to be cheap. Go home, Steve. In the words of Family Matters, go home, Steve. I'm silly tonight. There is over $950,000 spent to support it and over $1 million spent to oppose it. And that's it, fam.